I'd give you a little bit of an update, because I was looking at the times from the earlier session this morning, from free practice 3. Now, yesterday we saw the racing was incredibly close. Well, I think the prediction for today's race is it's even tighter. The teams have eked out even more performance from the cars, because if you look at those free practice times, 0.04 of a second split each car. If you look at the whole field, that equates to, in terms of distance, 36 meters. That's the equivalent of 2 double-decker buses. Basically, what I'm trying to say is it's incredibly tight, so we can't wait to see what happens in the race. But of course, before we get racing underway, they first must qualify. Now, qualifying perhaps isn't hugely critical here in Berlin, given the amount of overtakes we saw yesterday. However, there are 3 championship points available, so it really does make a huge difference. You can have a look there at the groups. So the 22 drivers are split into Group A and Group B. They go out in 2 sessions of 12 minutes each. During that session, they have to set the quickest lap time possible, and the top 4 from each group will go into the duels. You can see there, Nick Cassidy is going to be in Group A. He, of course, has just taken the lead of the championship standings from Pascal Wehrlein, who's in Group B. So we could see the 2 of them go up against each other in the duels, which would be a fantastic thing to see. So after, of course, the group sessions, we go into the quarters, the semis, and finish with the grand final. That's the finale, which is always such a nail-biting moment to find out who will take pole position here. Could it be Pascal Wehrlein for the 4th time at his home race? Well, we're just moments away from finding out. JJ, back to you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. So on qualifying, guys, today, because we did see some different names at the top of the grid, is that something that we can expect to see again today, Alan?
I think we will still see some different names at the top of the grid, maybe not as extreme as it was yesterday, because overnight you've got the likes of Jake Dennis and the other teams thinking about areas they maybe didn't quite get right in yesterday's qualifying. However, it's quite clear that certain cars and certain drivers are suiting this circuit better than maybe they were at previous ones.
Why is that, Karun? I mean, is it the circuit? Is it just, I don't know, the adjustments that have been made to the cars? Why are we seeing such difference in top of the grid?
I think a big part of it is if you get the camera to tilt down and look at the surface, you can tell why. It is so unique in the whole world of motorsport. This is concrete laid in the 1930s. Yeah. I mean, there's stones exposed out there, and all of that is what the tires are running on, which is just completely different to asphalt that you have everywhere else. And I think that's why we're getting a mix-up. But I get it, in the big picture, the qualifying order doesn't matter so much in terms of where the race is, but it does 2 things. 1, the pole sitter gets 3 points, which is valuable for the championship. Yep. 2, it gets you out of the danger zone. If you can qualify further up in the top 8 and get in the duels, it gets you out of the danger zone of knocking off your front wing or doing damage to the car in those first 2 or 3 laps of the race.
The other thing is, to that point as well, you use energy as you're coming through the field when you're trying to recover from a bad qualifying. And so that's going to be one of the key factors today with the different race distance that we had yesterday. Do
you think something, I mean, Mahindra and Mataro was very happy yesterday. Can we see that again, do you reckon? I mean, they go into the race very confident, didn't they?
I think so. He's a very good qualifier, we know. He's good in Tokyo. He was good yesterday, so yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Well, it's all about to start here for qualifying for this doubleheader here in Berlin. Qualifying is on the way, so let's send you now to commentary with Tom Brooks.
It's round 10 of the 2024 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. We are here in Berlin, a double-header in the sunshine. It's great to have your company here for the Sun Minimeal Berlin E-Prix, and we are very much looking forward to seeing what is going to happen in qualifying today. 22 of the world's best drivers taking to this newly redesigned Tempelhof circuit here this morning in the 8 to try and be as high up the grid as they can possibly be for qualifying and indeed for the E-Prix in this afternoon. Yesterday was a frenetic affair. We saw action aplenty. We saw carbon fibre littered all over the circuit. We saw delight for some drivers. We saw despair for some others, including for these 2, for Jake Dennis and for Norman Nato. It was a day to forget for the Andretti team. 2 DNFs in a row for Jake Dennis, 2 non-scores, and he'll be disappointed with that, hoping to right the wrongs. This man here, Pascal Wehrlein, was leading the championship coming into the event, but eventually he lost it to the man in the middle of your picture. That is Nick Cassidy, who won the Berlin E-Prix, his 2nd successive victory here at Tempelhof. As you can see, the Berlin skyline looking resplendent in the Sunday sunshine. And we've got 2 groups of drivers ready to go out on track for qualifying here very, very shortly. Group A is up first, 22 drivers in total. We split them into groups of 11, and then 4 from each of those groups will go through into the duels, and that is how we will decide who lines up where on the grid. Green flag is out, and Group A is underway, and here are the drivers that are taking to the circuit, or some of them at least. Nick Cassidy, Oliver Rowland, Mitch Evans, Max Gunter, Antonio Felix da Costa, Jake Hughes, Dan Ticktum, Enno Mortara, also Lucas de Grassi, Kelvin van der Linde and Paul Aaron. If this is your first time joining us here in Berlin, then you'll notice a few names on that list that are not necessarily familiar in Formula E terms, including Kelvin van der Linde and Paul Aaron, of course. A few replacement drivers here this weekend owing to a World Endurance Championship clash for the 6 hours of Spa that took place yesterday. So, for example, at Envision, they've got an entirely new driver lineup. Paul Aaron in one seat in Sebastian Buemi's car. On the other side of the garage, in Robin Freit's car, we have got Joel Eriksson, the Swedish driver. Now, looking forward to qualifying here, Alan. I think this is going to be pretty exciting. What we saw yesterday was that qualifying in terms of the finishing position wasn't necessarily that important, but in terms of staying out of trouble, it was pretty crucial.
Yes, it's always good to start at the front, and you're in the risk area, and we've seen quite a few cars getting involved in incidents as they were trying to make their way back from maybe a less ideal qualifying. And so in that respect, it's without doubt better to be at the front than not. This was one team there, we just saw Andretti's, who struggled very much in qualifying yesterday. They had both cars on the back row of the grid, and they'll be looking to try to improve on that. In fact, Roger Griffiths was saying to Nicky earlier on that they think they found something in free practice this morning that's going to help them.
Well, they needed to, really, didn't they? They seemed like a team that had lost direction. You know, they had Nato on a completely different setup to Jake Dennis, and that to me just screams that they're a bit lost. They don't really know what direction to go in. Yeah, exactly. But you know, let's see if they can pull it back, because without doubt Jake Dennis was quick in the race. It just happens to be this point that's very difficult for them. You see our virtual race engineer saying that drivers have got 2 runs, outs, prep lap, push lap, and so on and so forth.
Well, in comparison to yesterday's qualifying, it's quite different today as well, because the sun's out, it's much warmer. However, on this straight that we've now got Nick Cassidy driving down, the start-finish straight, the wind is heavily in their face, and so breaking into this first corner, first of all, the circuit's a lot cleaner than it was yesterday due to the fact that it's had a race on it. So all the dust and the dirt and everything that's accumulated since the Berlin E-Prix last year is now away from the track. And the second thing is that there is just everybody's got a little bit more feel for it. So I expect faster lap times than what they were doing yesterday.
Well, especially this morning, actually, in free practice 1, cooler conditions, but a 1:01.9 was the quickest time set by Pascal Wehrlein in FP3. I mean, that was one of the sort of quicker times that we saw relatively in qualifying for round 9 yesterday.
And this was someone that I thought did a pretty good job yesterday, Paul Aaron. He jumped into this car with very limited amount of running, and was up in the top 8 before he lost his front wing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately meant that it wasn't the result he was hoping for, but there was speed and the competitive nature was definitely there.
Yeah, he had a really good run, actually. He was hit with a 5-second penalty at the end of the race. Quite a few drivers were, actually, and it was quite unlucky to miss out on points eventually. His car was smoking as he came over the timeline, had a bit of bodywork damage at the checkered flag.
Yeah, let's be honest about it. I don't think any other car on the race had no damage. I think they were all had some sort of hits and bumps and things as they were making their way through.
Yeah, we had Alice Powell in commentary for Free Practice 3 earlier on this morning. She's doing the rookie test for Envision tomorrow. She said the team were up until about 12:30 getting the cars fixed and ready for racing today, and then they were in at 5:45 this morning. So pretty long hours and not a lot of rest for some of the teams. Enno Mortara, team watching on there in the garage. Great job from him in qualifying yesterday. Managed to get himself onto pole position. Mahindra's first pole since Mexico 2023. Mortara's first front row start of the season as well. Actually, his first pole since Tempelhof here a good few years ago, back in 2022. So, opportunity knocks here possibly for Enno Mortara. And indeed, the Mahindra powertrains have looked pretty strong so far this weekend, as Cassidy just improves to 4th.
Yeah, the cars work pretty well round here for whatever reason. Yeah, and you know, he's consistently been up there, finished in 8th place, and so got some points on the board and had a much better run than I think anybody expected prior to first practice. Let's see if he can actually achieve it again today. It's the two Jaguars at the top of the timesheets at the moment with Evans and Cassidy, so not really a surprise considering.
Yeah, Lucas de Grassi's popped up into the top 4, but I tell you who does need a good day, I think, is Jake Hughes. He got, somewhat surprisingly, out-qualified by Taylor Barnard as a rookie yesterday. Didn't really have a great race either, so I think McLaren and Hughes will be looking for a bit of redemption today.
You said that about Barnard out qualifying. He was actually the fastest of the 4 Nissan runners.
Okay, that's P2, just a microsecond off Mitch. Push on in. What do you want to do for your second run?
Same again.
Yeah, 4,000's off there for Cassidy. As they come back into the pits, they'll go in and change over the boots, get a new set of tyres on and go up for their second and final runs.
He was annoyed with the run plan yesterday, wasn't he?
He was.
About their approach, so I think, you know, they've clearly decided, okay, what we're going to do is have a feel of the track. Track temperature is still quite low. It's only 19 degrees. I had a quick look at the screen on the way. Wow.
Yeah, it's concrete, so it doesn't really absorb the temperature in the same way as a tarmac circuit. But the thing which I felt, Karun, was that the wind is much stronger, and it's gusty, and it's all in their face coming down into turn 1. So in the braking area, they should, in theory, be able to brake that little bit later and deeper into the first corner.
Incredibly abrasive surface, this as well. I was looking at Nick Cassidy's tyres once he'd come to the podium area yesterday, and they were just absolutely littered. You know, normally tyre wear isn't something we're used to talking about in Formula E. It's not really a factor, but here in particular, there is an element of tyre management over that E-Prix.
Yeah, there is. And the other thing that's interesting as well, normally a circuit just gains grip all the way through and get faster and faster every session. But here it seems to plateau at different points. And it's made a big step overnight, but it's not that it'll suddenly get quicker all the way through this group stage and the next one. And that's one of the reasons I think that Antonio Felix da Costa, who is currently 8th, has actually just popped out of the pits. He's decided to go early to make sure he's got a clean lap.
I mean, he's 8th, but he's only 2/10 off pole. It is so tight. He doesn't need to, you know, if he can find 2 or 3 meters in the braking zone for a couple of corners, that'll pop him into the top 4. That's all he's actually looking for. And on board here with Paul Aaron on his first Formula E weekend, winding himself up.
Yeah, he's had a good weekend so far as Paul Aaron. We were just talking about it before you came into the box, Karun, and you know, all very impressed with the performance that he's put in. Likewise, Joel Eriksson as well, not doing too badly. Joel actually returning to Formula E. He'll be out in Group B after the Group A session has concluded. So drivers now in the pits coming out for their final runs of the session. Here is Antonio Felix da Costa, Team Radio.
Think about settings changes if needed.
So what settings does he have the parameters to adjust whilst he's driving there?
He can adjust essentially the amount of recovery and the brake balance, you know, in the cockpit. As we see on board de Grassi, what are we going to see here?
Touched the wall.
Yeah, he got a slide on even before the apex, and that just carried on until it sort of got him into that outside wall. But he'll get away with it. We've seen other drivers, including Mortara, do that yesterday. It's a big form.
Well, Mortara hit that wall and then went on to get pole position.
Yeah, he did. Very impressive stuff from Edo Mortara, so no such problems to worry about for de Grassi, who was also really impressive yesterday. Got himself into the duels for the first time this season and actually had a really good run of things. Unfortunately, in the race, it all came undone. He ended up involved in an incident with the 2 ERTs and got spun around, and he was sassy de Grassi on the team radio after that.
Yeah, I think they realised that there was a chance of a point around here, and so, you know, when you do get taken out by someone, it happens, but obviously a little bit of frustration because an opportunity that may not present itself today was definitely there for the team.
Here's Antonio Felix da Costa. Strong finish for him yesterday, just behind teammate Pascal Wehrlein. 6th is where he came across the line at the checkered flag. The 2 Porsches looking fast, but I have to say not as fast as we've seen them throughout other points of the season so far.
Yeah, certainly there's been, well, it's a short circuit, that's one thing, and so it's difficult to make that big step forward. As Karun mentioned yesterday, I think it's a very valid point. There's actually, in this new layout of circuit, the reality is there's slightly less number of corners, because there are still corners, but they're all flat out, and so therefore it's a bit difficult to make that extra bit of time.
So, Gunther, you can see the bottom right-hand picture. Da Costa, fastest overall in the second sector. What's it going to be as he comes across the timing line? Does he improve? He will. Goes up to just 6th fastest, though. It's not enough for him at the moment. Gunter is on the bubble. They're sort of building up now, aren't they, trying to get heats into the times. What we've seen in these group stages, especially sort of the second flying lap, is when we see the times beginning to tumble.
Yeah, Da Costa's first sector was about 10th and a bit, wasn't it? To everybody else's second and third sectors were really strong. So we'll see on this lap. Maybe the tyres weren't quite ready to attack the first sector, so we'll have a look on this lap if he can improve.
Yeah, a minute and a half left of this session, so drivers will probably get one more flying lap in this run as we look at Nick Cassidy. The Stu Jaguar still leading 1 and 2 at this stage, but expect the timing screens to start lighting up like a rental car dashboard before too long as we get those faster sector times coming in.
What do you do in a rental car?
Well, everyone does in a rental car. Goes flat out from the moment you get the keys until you hand it back, isn't it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Just remind me never to go with you to the airport.
Fastest car in the world, one of those. Jake Hughes, personal best in the first sector. Lost a bit of time there in the second sector as Cassidy comes around turn 14 and 15 to the timing line. It's not an improvement on this particular lap for Cassidy. He's only 4 thousandths adrift of his teammate. Hughes looking a little bit more handy. He needs a good lap here, really.
No, only 10.
He didn't even hit his own best in the middle sector for Jake Hughes, so therefore a mistake somewhere in that middle sector and currently down well off the pace.
See Degrassi here just backing off, trying to find a bit of space so he can go on his final flying lap. Third quickest for him at the moment. Could it be a second appearance in the duels for Abt Cooper in their home race?
Just got to be careful, that little bit of traffic up ahead of him as now we're on board with Edo Mortara, pole position yesterday.
Shake of the head there for the team as we watch on. Kelvin van der Linde improves in time but stays 11th quickest at the moment, just 0.3 of a second, covering 11 drivers. Very, very tight margins. Time is beginning to count down, so this will be the final flying lap for quite a few drivers. Cassidy's the fastest in the first sector, personal best in the second sector. Tictum also on a bit of a hot one there as well. You can hear the tyres chirping in pain as you come through this triple apex left-hander here for Cassidy.
This is a good lap for Cassidy. Very, very good lap.
See what it looks like as he comes to the timelines. He's going to go to the top of the pile. He is by 1/10 of a second. That's a bit more like it for Nick Cassidy. What about Jake Hughes? This is pretty critical here for the Briton. He's close, but I don't think it's going to be close enough. 5th fastest. The McLaren misses out on the duels again. Da Costa goes up 3rd quickest. Good lap time there for Antonio. Pushes Degrassi on to the bubble. What about Oliver Rowland? No. 7th fastest. Again, a challenging time in the group stages for the 2 Nissans. Tictum improves. Stays 8th fastest. Gunter goes up into 2nd. Does knock out Lucas Degrassi then as Degrassi comes to the timing line. Van der Linde, is he going to improve as he comes through? Mortara is now through into 4th place as well. Exactly the same time to the 1,000th of a second with Mitch Evans. What about Van der Linde? He doesn't improve. So there are your 4 drivers that make it through from Group A. Nick Cassidy, Maximilian Gunter, Mitch Evans and Edo Mortara. What a difference today makes for Jaguar. Both out of the duels, out of the group stages of qualifying. Didn't make it into the duels yesterday. And here for round 10, they're both through.
Yeah, and Mortara through again, proving the performance of yesterday was certainly not just a little bit of a fluke, but also on the other side of it, Oliver Rowland down there in 8th. He's going to be sitting in and around about the same place as he was yesterday. Very quick in the race, but still hasn't got it hooked up in qualifying for the Nissan.
Yeah, well, a very exciting Group A qualifying session. Group B will be along the way very, very shortly. But going through, just to remind you, Cassidy, Gunter, Evans and Edo Mortara. So then we shift our attention over to Group B qualifying as we listen to some team radio.
Okay, whatever happens, you guys executed really well, and I did my best job, so well done.
Nice work, mate.
There's a positivity there coming out of the radio. Something that was a question mark about the strategy they had for the quali runs yesterday, but clearly thought about it.
Well, let's have a look and get confirmation of Group A qualifying then for round 10. So, going through, Nick Cassidy, Maximilian Gunter, Mitch Evans and Edo Mortara. Missing out, Antonio Felix da Costa, Lucas Degrassi and 3 Britons, Jake Hughes, Oliver Rowland and Dan Tictum. Paul Aaron down there in 10th place and Kelvin van der Linde bookending the session. So work to do and just 0.4 of a second ultimately separating 11 drivers over the course of that one. So as we saw yesterday, very, very tight margins, and I'm sure that's going to be set to be the same for Group B qualifying coming along the way, which of course features the former championship leader Pascal Wehrlein, likewise Jake Dennis as well, who needs a strong run. Both of the Andretti's do, who are both in that session actually, as a matter of fact. Let's have a look at some highlights from this one. This is Edo Mortara. in the Mahindra, through into the duels for a second race in succession. You can see him here just pushing those front tyres, trying to generate some front grip on his build lap. Mitch Evans there, third quickest for him in the Jaguar TCS racing car. Seems to have found their mojo a little bit here for the 10th round. Max Günther, always impressive over the course of a lap. We know that he can really pull it out the bag, and so he has been able to do. But Nick Cassidy, the winner from yesterday, riding a crest of a wave, and he just looks so confident with that car around here.
Yeah, he definitely does. He's got a feel for this style of racing, and definitely fitted very quickly into the Jaguar team. Got to remember, when he came into Formula E a few seasons ago, he was with Envision, and so therefore this is his first season in a different team, and alongside what we have to say is a super quick teammate as well. You know, it's something that he's certainly making his mark there.
You see the championship standings there, 9-point advantage for Nick Cassidy now over Pascal Wehrlein. Oliver Rowland there trailing in third place. Dennis and Evans actually tied on points there for fourth position as it stands as well. So then we look to Group B qualifying for round 10 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship here at Tempelhof. Here is Pascal Wehrlein, former championship leader, ready to go out on track. A top 5 finish for him yesterday, trailing by 9 points to Nick Cassidy in the title race. What is he going to be able to do here in this session? Let's have a listen in here.
Actually, I quite liked the first time.
Positive body language there from Nick Cassidy. Here's the lineup for Group B qualifying. So Wehrlein, Dennis, Verne, Van Dorn, Fenestraz, Nato, Sete Camara, Deruvala, Barnard, Jordan King and Joel Eriksson. 2 names that might be a little bit unfamiliar to you, both of whom are in this weekend, replacing Nick de Vries and also Robin Freitz, respectively. So this is going to be interesting. You'd expect, given what we saw yesterday, the 2 DS Penske's to be up there. The Andretti's still a question mark. The Porsche of Wehrlein, he's going to be there and thereabouts. But other than that, I've got no idea.
Yeah, I think you're exactly spot on there. And for me, it's a question, can someone nick that 4th place? Because the 2 DSs are going to be in there, and Pascal Wehrlein, as you mentioned. So who's going to be the one that sort of just gets that little edge over the others?
Don't forget about the Formula E Predictor app as well. Scan the QR code, bottom left-hand corner of your screen as we get into the duels and we find out who of the drivers from Group B are going to make it through, as we've got our 8 into the quarterfinals. Tell us who you think is going to progress forwards and be in that front row fight here as the drivers exit onto the circuit, and Group B qualifying now begins. Down in towards turn 6 and 7. This was the scene of a lot of overtaking. We went 4 wide for the lead here at quite a few occasions during the race yesterday. We're expecting much the same. Of course, 2 laps fewer in the E-Prix this afternoon, Alan. How do you think that's going to change things?
I think at the end of the day, it just means they go a little bit earlier to flat out sprinting at the end. I don't see too many changes in the lead up to that particular point, but without doubt, it'll be just that's 38 laps instead of 40, so they'll start sprinting a bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I think it was about 7 laps to go, wasn't it? Once we got the added laps, that they went for it. So today it'll probably be 9-10 laps to go. So you'll still have the madness of the first sort of, you know, probably 25, 26 laps, and then there'll be a point where somebody will pull the pin.
Yeah, and safety cars, of course, were pretty paramount yesterday as well. It was Nick Cassidy, that second safety car really helped him out, because as soon as the safety car pulled in, he just absolutely went for it right at the end of the race and pulled out such an advantage.
Well, it helped quite a few drivers, and one of them being Taylor Barnard there we see on the screen in the bottom section, because he actually had to come in and do a pit stop, and then the safety car allowed him to get onto the back of it and then ultimately finish in 10th place, which was a great result for him. So I think the safety car probably hurt some people, but it helped a lot of others.
Yeah, Barnard becoming the youngest point scorer ever in Formula E. He's the youngest driver ever to have competed, the first teenager in Formula E as well, which is going to make us all feel a little bit older here in the commentary box.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about there. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's Sylvain Filippi, the team principal for Envision. They've had a difficult start to 2024, given that they were the team champions of last year, down to 8th in the standings so far. Of course, without their 2 full-time drivers here this weekend as well, different expectations for them. Joel Eriksson just put in the first time in the session. Jay Penske watching on for the DS Penske outfit as well. I think he'll be pretty pleased with Van Dorn's podium yesterday.
No, Jeff's podium.
Jeff's podium, beg your pardon, sorry. Yeah, second podium of the season, of course, for Vern, wasn't it? Just pops it into third quickest. Virtual race engineer says that the expected lap time to reach the duels 102.5.
So that's a little bit quicker than the first group, wasn't it? It was a 102.6 in the first group.
Is that down to track evolution?
Not really too much track evolution. I think it's just probably a little bit more down to the fact that the second one's out. They'll have a little bit of a look at it. It'll be roughly the same sort of performance.
Well, it's an interesting one, actually, because obviously these drivers have just seen, some of them have seen their teammates going out, and they've got that sort of benchmark. Do you think that'll help them in terms of knowing where the reference points are over the course of this lap?
Well, it was interesting yesterday because what I heard was that one side of the garage wasn't necessarily communicating with the other side of the garage with some of the teams. And so it's a bit of a surprise. Here's Verline's radio.
No one is pushing behind, so everyone on the same strategy at the moment.
So 2.8.
Just focus on yourself.
2.8 for Verline, 2.9 for Dennis. Van Dorn a bit slower. So far on the first run, they're just laying down a banker, aren't they? We normally see everybody improve by 2-3 tenths as the session unfolds. Question is, do they go in early for the second set of tyres like we saw a lot of people doing yesterday?
There was a couple of people did that earlier on. Da Costa did it in the first session, so the chances are that they found that was a positive for them that, at Porsche, then they might do the same for Verline. One interesting point so far, Dennis up there in second and also Nato in sixth. So suggestions from the first laps that we saw, and also a little bit from free practice, that the Andrettis are a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, it was faster than the time he set in qualifying yesterday, actually, for Jake Dennis. Only by a few tenths of a second or so as Joel Eriksson improves up to the top of the order. Just immediately better there by Pascal Verline, but Eriksson seems to have a good handle on that car. Ooh, close to the wall there for Jean-Eric Verne, a little bit wide out of turn 13.
That's a good lap, though, from Dennis again. Up into third, 2.7, but Van Dorn 2.5. He was very good in qualifying yesterday, wasn't he? Ended up on the front row of the grid, and the Maserati Jehan goes across to sixth, nearly 3 tenths away. But Stoffel Van Dorn, he was disappointed, I think, with the race. You know, having started in the front row, he ran in that front group, missed an attack mode activation. He missed the first timing loop, which shuffled him back into the pack, and then he got stuck in Degrassi's incident, which completely sort of ruined his race at that point. So I think he'll be looking for more today.
Yeah, it's took him over the line in 7th place, but it's a case of what might have been there for Van Dorn, deep into the hairpin there for Verne.
Yeah, fastest first sector of anyone in from Jean-Eric Verne, a 19.5. His personal best in the middle sector, so he's got the triple left-hander to come. That's going to be the end of the lap, but it's a good one from Jean-Eric Verne.
Yeah, looks like he's all okay. He seems soaring away at the wheel. Bit of oversteer, though, through 14. That's going to cost him time, and he'll carry that all the way down to the timing line. Will it be an improvement for Verne? It is. Just up into 3rd place.
Yeah, but I think without that oversteer, when he went back on throttle at the last apex in the final corner, he would have been quickest. But without doubt, the two DSs are competitive.
So the first runs are done then, as the drivers come back into the pit lane, and exactly what we have seen in all of the group stages so far this weekend. 2 runs expected for the drivers. Now back in here for Pascal Verline. Be chatting with the race engineer, just debriefing, trying to work out where they can find those small margins. Good to see Sebastian Buemi back in the Envision garage as well. Hot-footed it over from Spa-Francorchamps, where he was racing yesterday, and is now supporting the team, trying to surpass his many years of expertise in Formula E to aid their progress here this afternoon. Van Dorn there, new set of boots on his car. What sort of conversations do you think they're going to be having between themselves and the race engineer?
Just, you know, a little bit of detail fine-tuning if they need anything changed, or also the other thing is where they see that potentially their teammate could be a little bit quicker, like Jev, for example. Where was he quicker in Sector 1? And trying to just feed those last little, not tenths of seconds, we're talking hundreds of seconds difference, because that could be the difference between going through and not.
Joel Eriksson has done a good job, hasn't he? Within a tenth of Van Dorn on what is his first full weekend.
Yeah, tires were not hot enough. I needed more temperature in them. Did you guys blanket them properly?
Yeah, Eriksson's first full weekend in a Gen 3 car. We haven't seen him back out since 2021. But interesting there for Sete Camera. We've heard that a lot on the team radio this weekend. Also Robin Freintz in the Envision garage as well, supporting the team. just helping them. But yeah, tyres in that operating window. This is the interesting thing, isn't it, coming into the duels especially, because you only get one build lap before you've got to go and do your fly. I know it's the same circumstances for everybody, but you've got more power. And if you remember yesterday, we saw Mortara just lighting up those rears like he was doing a demo run down in Berlin.
He's also trying to generate into the front, because if you've got rear grip but you haven't warmed the fronts up, then you just get big understeer, and that's no good either. And so they'll be doing a lot of a very aggressive weaving and, I would say, over pushing the front in the corners to try to make it scrub and generate something there.
Well, here is Jean-Eric Verne, currently third quickest at the moment. Taylor Barnard as well. Could we see a surprise in the Neon McLaren? There is the air temperature. It's got up to about 18 degrees. Track temperature up to 16 degrees now. So feels a little bit warmer compared to this time yesterday, I must say.
Yeah, it was pretty cold yesterday, got to be honest with you. So only 2 cars in the pit, being Verne and Barnard. Everybody else out onto the circuit already. And so I think it's trying to be a little bit of an offset there for both Verne and Barnard as they just pop out the pits, just to try and make sure they get a clean lap.
Well, the risk of that, though, is if you wait until that happens and you get a yellow flag at the end of the session.
Someone tags the wall. You know, you definitely have got the opportune time to do it. However, saying that, that depends on everybody else that's on the track being clean.
Well, let's see how this is going to go down with just over 2.5 minutes left of the session at the moment. It's Van Dorn, Verline, Verne and Ericsson, the 4 drivers who have made it through. As we look here at Sasha Fenestraz, needs a strong weekend. He has not had a particularly brilliant time of things as of late. Somewhat anonymous during the race yesterday. Ended up coming across the timing line in 9th place for another points finish. But considering where Roland has been so far this season, he really needs to have a stronger second half of the year, does the French-Argentine driver. Going through turn 9, getting onto the power as he heads down this back straight. This is the old start-finish straight, by the way, because of course we've revised the circuit layout here at Tempelhof. So heading in towards turns 14 and so on, this triple apex left-hander, that's the old first corner essentially, where it sort of went back around on itself, and then you come down here into the new turn 1 and turn 2.
So the 2 Andretti cars are better than yesterday, but they're still outside the duels, aren't they? So a big couple of minutes coming up for them.
So what do you think that's down to then, Alan? Because of course you look at the Tag Heuer Porsches, same power train in the car, they're going around and they're doing pretty okay inside the top 10 yesterday, and then you look at the Andrettis, exactly the same machinery on paper, but not able to get what they need to out of it.
Details make a difference. It's exactly the same reason that Porsche struggled to maybe have the same pure pace as Andretti had last year. Andretti had the upper hand. They understood what made the car tick, what made Jake Dennis tick with the car, and for whatever reason with the upgrades over the course of the winter, it hasn't quite flowed for them so far. But Pascal Wehrlein especially has understood it with his engineer, and they've made it really, I would say, function pretty well. No, Wehrlein's been quick all season. Qualifying was his struggle last year.
So under a minute now remaining as Fenestraz gets a banker lap time in, improves up to 5th fastest. What about Taylor Barnard? Personal best in sector 1, personal best in sector 2. He aims it for the timing line, breaks the beam, and loses time in that final sector. Quite a long time actually for that matter as well. 3.5 tenths of a second he ultimately finishes down as Daruvula comes across the line. Only 8th quickest for him so far. He's been good in terms of 1-lap pace here this weekend.
Nobody's making any massive improvements at this stage of the session, isn't it? I wonder if the track temperatures come up a bit. I don't know, but it's not seeing the big sort of chunks of improvement that we were seeing in Group A.
Yeah, but we also, yesterday in Group B, the first runs were generally pretty much the runs. As Nato now puts himself up into 6 right behind Dennis, but still not into the top 4.
Yeah, it's not enough for the duels as it stands for now. Set a camera, very quick. Yes, they did make it into the duels in that ERT. 1-lap pace has been pretty strong for them so far, and he's good at extracting the maximum out of it. Could we see an upset here for Sete Camera? Nato now improves fastest overall in that first sector as we see Sete Camera aiming for the timing line out of 14, out of 15. Comes over, it's only 7th fastest as he takes the checkered flag. Fenestraz only goes 8th quickest as well.
Dennis is just on the quickest middle sector of anybody, so this could be the lap from Jake Dennis. Norman Nato also very quick.
Yeah.
So they are pulling it out now.
Finally, at the end of this session, Van Dorn's going to come across the line. It won't be an improvement for him as he takes the checkered flag, but he's fastest overall in this session. Dennis does improve. He goes fastest then at 1:02.5 for Jake Dennis. Good lap time for him. At the moment, it's into the duels. What about Joel Eriksson then? 5th quickest for him currently as he comes to the line. Stays 5th fastest. Norman Nato in the second of the Andretti's. Can he spoil Jean-Eric Vergne's party? He can. He knocks out Jean-Eric Vergne, so the 2 Andretti's make it through. And from disappointment 24 hours ago to delight for Andretti, it is Jake Dennis, Norman Nato, Stoffel Van Dorn and Pascal Wehrlein, the 4 drivers that go forwards into the duels. And you can hear what that meant for Andretti.
I mean, they had a long night of looking at data, and they've gone from being last and last in the 2 groups yesterday to a 1-2. That is a remarkable turnaround overnight, and well done to the entire team for that. But the top 5, Tom, 92 thousandths of a second for 5 cars.
Less than 100th of a second.
Man, that was absolutely everything. I haven't done a lap like that in a very long time.
What a difference a day makes for Jake Dennis and for Norman Nato. Makes it through. Pascal Wehrlein will be counting his lucky stars just by the skin of his teeth. Is through by 9 1/1000ths of a second at the end of Group B qualifying. Well, there we are. Jake Dennis now back into the pit lane. Pascal Wehrlein directly behind him. And good stuff for Dennis. He'll be pleased with that, as will the entire Andretti team. No surprise to them at all. Jean-Eric Vergne, though, missing out. Front row for him here yesterday. And unfortunately, it is not a repeat of things. Sorry, I should say second row of the grid yesterday. Head of the second row in 3rd place is where he qualified in the semi-finals. And unfortunately, for round 10, he does not make it through into the duels. Let's get confirmation of Group B qualifying then for round 10. Jake Dennis, Norman Nato, Stoffel Van Dorn and Pascal Wehrlein are the 4 drivers that progress forwards. We say goodbye to Jean-Eric Vergne, to Joel Eriksson, Jehan Daruvala, Sergio Sette-Camara, Sacha Fenestraz, Taylor Barnard and Jordan King are the 6 drivers who do not progress forwards from this session. Let's see how things are going to go in the duel stages, because of course it's not only the fact that it's a one and done lap time situation for the drivers, it's also an increase in power. We go up from 300 to 350 kilowatts. We get 1 flying lap for the drivers. There is a lot at stake. We pit them head to head against one another as well. Fantastic to see so many fans here in Berlin. The atmosphere has quite literally been electric this weekend. It has been very, very enjoyable to see so many people here enjoying Formula E in Berlin. Of course, we've been coming here since 2015. We had a break in 2016 where we raced down in the centre of Berlin, but this is a historic home for Formula E and a real fan favourite.
Yes. Oh my God, that was good. God, it gives me goosebumps when I nail a lap like that.
Quality, mate. Guess who's P2? Not sure if you could tell.
Jake Dennis then, as you can hear there, delighted with that. Fantastic job from Jake Dennis and for Andretti. Exactly what it means to them. You know, we heard Dennis after quali yesterday, and he was just so disappointed and saying, you know, we look like a bunch of rookies. Well, 24 hours later, he will be delighted. And also, in terms of the duel lineup, it's going to be Pascal Wehrlein versus Jake Dennis. That's a spicy situation, if ever there was one. We're in the halfway stage of the season now, and both drivers still very much in the title fight. There is Jordan King, qualified last in that session, half a second off, unfortunately for him. But nonetheless, it's only his 2nd race in Formula E after being a long-time tester for Mahindra. And it's all about experience and just enjoying yourself for Jordan King here this weekend.
Right, that is Groups A and B done in qualifying today. In a minute, we're going to be going back for the duels. Delighted to say we've been joined by Andre Lotterer, fresh from Spa. Managed to put it on pole as well when you was out there, didn't you? Sorry, not on pole, on the podium you got yourself on.
Exactly.
Very well done, well done. Thank you very much for joining myself and Alan. Let's get straight into it though, guys. Nick Cassidy, again, just going from strength to strength, isn't he, at the minute? He seems really confident in that car, Alan.
Yeah, and also yesterday they weren't quite as confident in qualifying. They qualified on the 5th, 6th row, so therefore they've clearly made an improvement, but he has got confidence. You can see the way he's driving as well.
Yeah.
Everything's flowing. They were talking about the strategy, the way they did qualifying yesterday. They rectified that today and delivered it fastest time.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant for them, but another person that seems to manage to get it done in the races, but struggled again today in qualifying, Oliver Rowland. What do you think is going through his head at the minute?
Well, you know, Formula E is quite up and down. Sometimes you put it together, sometimes not. You don't always have the package for ultimate lap time, but then the race is a different story. You know, it's really about getting the tires right. The surface here is very specific, so the window of operation is quite small. So, and also today, teams improved a lot from yesterday, so the margin is so small. So to find that extra performance, it gets harder and harder. So, but yeah, he's got the race. We saw that you can overtake quite well, so it's a different story. But it's always nice to be able to qualify in the front. And but yeah, he will do well in the race.
Yeah, I'm sure he has. He continues to do that throughout the season. But we can get more information actually from Oliver Rowland because I think he's been speaking to Nicky.
Well, Oliver Rowland, Mr. Consistent, I'm going to start calling you now. 5 podiums so far this season, but not into the duels.
No, look, we've been struggling over one lap the whole time we've been here, so yeah, wasn't the qualifying we wanted. The car was better than it was yesterday, just not quite enough to get through, and my lap wasn't perfect, so yeah, we'll be starting at the back and hopefully have an interesting race forward again.
All right, thanks very much, Oliver Rowland.
Used to south of France.
Yeah, quite an honest assessment there from Oliver Rowland. I think the Andretti team, which we'll talk about in a minute, they absolutely turned it on its head and put in a brilliant performance, Jake Dennis and Norman Nato. And I think Karun's done some analysis for us, actually, on the E-Pad, just on that performance.
Well, I'm going to look at Jake Dennis's lap because, as you said, it completely turned it on its head. Yesterday, he was 11th and last in the group stages. Today, he's at the top of the times with Nato right behind him. So let's look at his lap because this braking phase of the corner, the entry phase, is where they've been struggling. But today, it does really look like Dennis has got confidence to trail the brakes in. He can attack the brake pedal initially, but also then trail the brakes in, get the nose of the car into the apex of the corner. And I think this really gets illustrated at this next one here, turns 6 and 7. It's got Stoffel van Dorn in front. Now, turns 6 and 7 are kind of being treated as one long hairpin. So Dennis here braking, he's still braking, slowing down. But look at this, he's able to take the trajectory he wants, get the nose on the apex. This wasn't something he had the confidence to do really comfortably yesterday qualifying. I think this is something that the Andretti team and he have worked very hard at clearly overnight, made some improvements, made some changes to the car, and he's able to do so. He's going to pick up a bit of a distant slipstream maybe here from Stoffel van Dorn, but ultimately I think the work has been done in the first half of the lap. His first 2 sectors were very strong. Good run through the final corner, nice and smooth on the way in, a little bit of oversteer at the final apex on the way out. But a good lap there from Jake Dennis, and I'm waiting to see what he can do in the duels because he's up against Pascal Wehrlein, his big championship rival from last year, JJ.
Thank you very much, Karun. Massive turnaround, you have to say. I mean, what can that be down to, Alan?
Details.
Yeah.
You know, the details make the difference, and it's the confidence. The driver always has to have confidence in the brake pedal. It's the first time that you're going in and you feel what the car's got underneath you, and he struggled with that clearly yesterday. But it wasn't just Jake Dennis.
No.
Norman Nato backed it up because he basically delivered the second fastest lap time, and that is a major turnaround, and you saw the relief on Roger Griffiths, the team principal, in fact your old team boss's face. And you know, there's a lot of pressure's been sitting in there, but it was released a little bit by that performance.
Does that make a difference, Andre, when your teammate is delivering as well, that both cars, something that's changed here has had such a big change on your results, but both cars doing it and doing it well gives you even more confidence? Or?
No, that's super important, and also especially now when you see these peloton races, you need to have your wingman, you know, around to be able to play for the attack mode, someone covering you up. But it's great to see the team turning it around. You know, there's so many settings you can do in these cars because we're braking over the regen. So it means like you can have a brake balance initially, then you can change it. For each corner, you can program really how you want your brake balance to happen and how much it's changing into the corner. So that helps you on these long trail braking phases where you want to stabilize the car or not to lock up, and to put that lap together, that's what helps you. And looks like the operations and the processes are working well. And to see that result on both cars, it means they're doing something right.
Yeah. Alan, I know you've been a big fan of predictions already this weekend. Some right, some wrong. Can you pick one in the duels?
Right, I have to say.
Can you pick one in the duels?
No.
No?
No, very simply
Mortara's
not.
very
Because
close.
if you're talking about the first 5 in Group B being under less than 1/10 of a second, that's far too much for me.
Well, let's find out, shall we? Let's get back out to the duels right now with your commentary of Tom Brooks.
So then, time for the duels for round 10 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. We're here for the Sun Minimeal Berlin E-Prix and very much looking forward to this. Quarterfinals, 8 drivers in total. We'll go them in 2x2 formation, and 4 of those will progress forwards into the semis. 2 lots of duels for that, and then of course 2 drivers going head-to-head in that front row fight. Let's see what is going to happen here. Yesterday, it was Mortara versus Stoffel van Dorn. Ultimately, it was Mortara in the Mahindra who ended up on pole position. For the first time since he was at Tempelhof here a couple of years ago. Here's some highlights for the group stages of qualifying. We saw Lucas de Grassi getting very close to the wall. This was Nick Cassidy also flirting with a bit of danger during his session. Both Jaguars actually making it through. Unlike yesterday, they both missed out, but ultimately were there in the race. This is Max Günther. The Maserati, he also progresses forwards into those duels. And this was that moment for Lucas de Grassi. Oversteer there through turn 14, sent him wide and just clipped the wall. A little light graze at turn 15. Nothing too much to worry about, but I'm sure a moment of worry nonetheless. Mortara though, pole position for him 24 hours ago. Missed out on the duels, I'm afraid to say. Here, in fact, no, he does miss it, make it through to the duels, beg your pardon. Only just though, of course, into 4th place in that session. This is Florian Modlinger and the Jaguar team also watching on as Cassidy progresses forwards. He'll be going head-to-head with Mortara later on here. And this was Group B qualifying stages as well. Jake Dennis and Andretti under pressure all weekend, needed to deliver, and that is exactly what they've done. They've been delving deep into data all night, trying to find those extra hundredths of a second here in Berlin, and it paid off quite handsomely as well. Pascal Wehrlein was pretty lucky actually to make it through. Jean-Eric Vergne got knocked out by the 2 Andrettis, and Wehrlein was on the bubble there for a brief moment as well. He was lucky that no other drivers behind improved. Van Dorn, will see him in the duels as well. This is Joel Eriksson for Envision as well. On the other side of the garage is his teammate Paul Aaron, who makes his debut here this weekend. Let's go down to Nicky, who is with the Estonian driver, who sadly did not make it through from the group stages, but nonetheless has had a strong debut weekend in Formula E.
Well, Paul, your second qualifying experience Formula E, how are you getting used to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's still all very new, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not getting these qualifyings right. I mean, the pace is there in both free practices. We've been up there and we've had a lot of potential, but I'm just not been able to put it together here in qualifying. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. Obviously, we need to look into that. But I think, you know, I'd rather either start at the very front or at the very back. So in a way, I mean, our day is still not done, but for sure it's quite tricky to understand the tyres in these qualifying sessions.
Yeah, it's a very tricky one to get right, that's for sure. Well, good luck for the race today. Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicky. So then, over to the quarterfinals. So Max Günther versus Mitch Evans first of all. Then we'll have Mortara and Nick Cassidy, Stoffel van Dorn and Norman Nato, Pascal Wehrlein and Jake Dennis going head-to-head against one another. Now, we know Max Günther, he's not afraid of getting his elbows out. He's got a bit of a, I don't want to say this lightly, but a bit of a win it or bin it strategy yesterday. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a bin it strategy. He ended up clipping the back of Mortara in the wall and retired from the race in one that he was looking strong, and indeed Maserati were looking strong here, Alan.
Yeah, they were. They were quick. They were competitive, and he was making his way to the front. But you know, maybe a little bit caught out by just the way it was down at turn number 9 and the exit, and that put him into the wall. And to be honest with you, that was a decent points haul that was just thrown away.
Yeah, I mean, if you smash your front wing against the back of another car, it seems to just drop like a hot potato, doesn't it? It sort of falls underneath the front tires.
And then, you know, he went straight into the wall from there, and that was it. His chips were done.
Well, we now wait for the green light to come on at the end of pit lane here. Mitch Evans versus Maximilian Günther. Bit of a difficult one to call this. You can see there, look at the wear on the front tyres for Mitch Evans. Only 2 sets of tyres here for them this weekend, but it is Evans versus Günther, Jaguar versus Maserati. In the Formula E predictor, 70% of you are predicting it'll go the way of Mitch Evans, who finished in 4th place at the end of yesterday's race. In terms of qualifying, however, he was one of the drivers who didn't make it through into the duels. Likewise, his teammate Nick Cassidy as well. So whatever happens here, he'll be starting further up the grid, and well, that can't be a bad thing.
They've made good progress with the car, I think, overnight. I mean, everybody's made progress with the car, right? They learned from yesterday, they make steps forward, but it does seem like Andretti are the ones who've made the biggest step, perhaps gathering some data from the Works Porsche team, because they had qualified well yesterday. But yeah, certainly Cassidy looked very, very strong in the group stages.
Well, in terms of how things go for the duels, we now up the power from 300 to 350 kilowatts. They only get 1 flying lap, so they get 1 out lap, but then they come across the timing line. That is the one and only opportunity for them to set a time. And of course, whoever is quicker between these two drivers will progress forwards into the semi-finals. So let's see how this works out. And this is exactly what we saw yesterday, pushing those front tyres, really scrubbing them to try and get heat into them. What we saw in the group stages, if you missed it, essentially was 2 build laps, trying to get as much as they could out of the car to get those tyres in the right operating window. Here, they don't have that luxury.
No, and it's such a short lap. That's the thing. There's only 5 corners, so they're having to work really quite hard on this surface, which is quite coarse. You know, it's as rough as a hash brown, really. You know, and it's not a smooth sort of silky jacket potato-ish thing like we had at Monte Carlo.
Well, across the timing line then comes Mitch Evans. Let's see what this looks like as he heads down into turn 1. And turn 2 is the real first braking zone. You can see how wide and vast it is through there. Nice apex for Evans. Gets the first part of the lap done. We've seen people ruin their laps in the duel stages. We saw that yesterday. You can almost scupper your chances before they have really begun. Max Günther in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, riding on board with him. Let's see what he looks like as Evans comes through that first sector. 19.5 is the time for him. Looks okay for Günther as well.
Yeah, it looks okay, but it's a 10th down on what Evans is at that point on the lap. And so right now, Günther's going to have a pretty strong middle sector, and especially this braking area that Günther's coming into now, especially here, if he's going to pull that gap back.
He looked neat and tidy through 3 and 4 and actually got the apex nicely into 6. Evans a little bit of a wobble on the entry into that final corner, and that's pushed him into a big understeer, which then snaps into an oversteer when the front grips. Günther still on the back straight, coming up to that final corner. Evans does a 2-0.
Yeah, not a bad time there for Evans, but he was chasing that mistake throughout that left-hander. Let's see whether Günther can build up an advantage. A snap of oversteer mid-corner through 13 there. That's going to cost him a fraction of time. Knight on the exit, though. Again, a little bit of a slide as he comes to the line. It's going to be close between them, but I think Evans is just going to do it by a 1/10 of a second, and indeed he does. The Jaguar driver, not the perfect lap by any stretch of the imagination, but he does go forwards into the semi-finals.
It was quite windy. I was out there in the pit lane just before this, and the wind has definitely picked up from what we had when we had the group stages. So maybe some of the gusts of winds are actually affecting the car, especially in the last corner.
Yes, we're through. 110. Good job. Good job.
I think also it's worth bearing in mind, with the extra 50 kilowatts of power, the drivers are arriving into that turn 12 faster than they have done the group stages, and this is their first lap. You know, they haven't really practiced this since earlier this morning. Well, since earlier this morning in free practice when conditions were a lot cooler. So the first run in the duels is always a bit of a voyage of discovery, I think.
Over to quarterfinals 2 then. Edo Mortara versus Nick Cassidy. Mortara, pole position 24 hours ago as we head down the start-finish straight into the first corner. We know that Mahindra has had good 1-lap pace. It looks okay for him through that first corner. Nick Cassidy, though, winner from the Berlin E-Prix for round 9. See the dive on the front end there as he hit the brakes. It's so bumpy into that first corner. Cassidy marginally ahead as it sits for now against Mortara. This is going to be pretty close, I happen to reckon, if they both drive clean laps.
Yeah, it will be very, very close anyway, because we've got to remember Mortara was on pole position, as you said. Cassidy struggled yesterday, quali, but topped the group. And I think it is all going to be about the last little detail in the final corner, as we saw also in the last one.
17,000 separating them in the first sector. Second sector will be pretty critical, I reckon, here for these drivers, and it's gotten even closer still at the moment between Mortara and Cassidy. Mortara is harrying that car through the final couple of corners. Gets a wiggle as he comes to the timing line. What's it going to be? He lost time in that final sector. It's a 102.2. I think this could give an advantage here to Nick Cassidy as he comes around 14 through turn 15. Look at it. He's picked it right up in the final couple of corners, and Cassidy does do enough. 2.5 tenths. So Mortara made a big mistake in that final sector.
Yeah, he was 3/10 slower in the final sector than Nick Cassidy. So it was all related to the way that came into the last corner.
Yes, mate. Quarter of a second, well done.
Both Jaguar drivers making it through into the dual stages.
A little bit wide there in turn 3 as he flicked it into 4. Well, it committed the car had, so it wasn't all hooked up in the first sector, even though it was a pretty good time.
Well, let's have a look at this for Mortara. That mistake was going wrong earlier on in that corner, wasn't it?
It was, and it also walked out to the outside wall as well, so it scrubbed off speed all the way through the exit of the final corner.
Quarterfinal 3 then, Stoffel Van Dorn versus Norman Nato. 80% of you reckon it'll go the way of Stoffel, 20% for Norman Nato. But the Andretti team have made a big step forward here for qualifying, and there's every possibility that we could see a bit of an upset from the man who was on the front row here yesterday and into the finals for round 9. Let's see how Norman attacks this circuit. Good to see him back in the duels for the first time in a fairly long time, actually. I have to check my notes and see the last time that we saw Nato in the duel. Second duel stage appearance, he was in Diriyah, actually, back in January. At the moment, it's advantage for Nato.
It is, and it was a good first sector, though, for Van Dorn, so it must be a very good sector for Nato. In fact, it is. Quickest first sector so far.
So, Nato with the advantage. Whatever Andretti have done to the car is working okay, and a bit of a slip and a slide there for Van Dorn just coming out of turn 9. That won't be helping it because he'll carry that mistake all the way down through into 11, 12 and 13. Through into 14 we go. It's not been the best lap time here for Stoffel Van Dorn, and this could be a bit of a problem. He's gained a bit of time though in that third sector. A 102 flat it is for him. We ride on board here with Nato. This final corner has caught out quite a few drivers, and again a snap of oversteer for Nato. He's constantly soaring away and correcting at the wheel. This is going to be very, very tight between these two. Will it go the way of Nato or Van Dorn? It's Nato by 32 hundredths of a second. Both Andretti's on form here so far, and we'll see what Nato's teammate is going to be able to do in a few minutes' time versus Pascal Wehrlein as well. So Van Dorn, second on the grid yesterday, doesn't go forwards from the quarterfinals here this morning.
Good job, buddy. Good job. 300. He's done? Yes, done. Good job. Good job. Good job. Focus on your tires, 120%, and box.
Nato's first dual win of the season as well. Quarterfinal 4 then, Pascal Wehrlein versus Jake Dennis. Penny for the thoughts of the two team principals going into this one, because this is going to be very close. And indeed, you think exactly the same on the predictor as well. 54% reckon it's going to go the way of Pascal Wehrlein, but 46 are rooting for Dennis. Down to the first corner we go. Look at the bumps as you head into that braking zone there. Oh, and Wehrlein's wide, isn't he, as well?
Yeah, he did that yesterday in qualifying, missed the apex by about a metre, went wide. The car bounced around, as we saw in the braking area. Let's see how Dennis is down into here.
One more we ride into turn 1 and then into turn 2 of Sky Master. Does he get the car in? Well, we just cut away from it. And Wehrlein there looking okay, 19.7. That's not the fastest first sector we've seen by any stretch of the imagination. Dennis looks like he's picked up a little bit in the first sort of half sector. And indeed, he's quicker by just under a tenth of a second.
Yeah, watch the braking into 6. This is where I think Jake and the team have made big improvements compared to yesterday. He takes a wider line on the way in, but sort of trails the nose back in, carrying a bit more momentum and minimum speed. And look, it's paid dividends. He's pulled a tenth on Verline there. Verline scrappy at the last corner, touchy inside curb, snap of oversteer as well.
Yeah, going wide through there is not going to help his cause as Verline goes over. It's a 1:02.2. That's not a particularly brilliant lap time at all. And Dennis has got a country mile. This is done and dusted before the lap's even finished here for Jake Dennis. All he's got to do is have a good run through these final couple of corners. He does get a snap of oversteer, but I think he'll still have enough in his pocket as he comes to the timing line. Will it be into the 101s? Not quite. A 1:02 flat there, so both Andretti's are through into the semi-finals. Well, whoever has been delving into the data has eaten their Weetabix this morning.
It's going to be teammates versus teammates, isn't it? Both the semis. Don't know if we've had that before. 2 Jags versus 2 Andretti's.
No, this is a good point. We'll have to get our stat man on it. Team radio.
Awesome work, mate. Well done. Keep the pace up.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
It was a good lap there from Dennis, but actually I think he went through principally because it wasn't such a good lap from Pascal Verline. Verline a couple of tenths away from what I'm sure he was able to do.
So Dennis's lap 7 thousandths faster than Evans. Cassidy's the one, isn't it, who's the standout?
Yeah. Oh, he hit the wall. He hit the wall, Verline, just coming out of turn 2. So that would have cost him a bit of time there as well. I'm sure he just kissed the rear right going through there.
Yeah, but he only lost half a tenth actually there. The middle sector he lost 2 tenths.
There we go. As we watch on here, ready for the semi-finals. Looking forward to this one. Well, what a quarter-final session we have had here. Great to see some support for Jake Dennis as well in Berlin as he makes it through into the duels. His only duel win this year was actually when he beat Verline back in Diriyah in the quarterfinals.
What time did Norman do?
It's 200ths quicker actually, so we're against Norman in the semi-final, and we'll be the first car.
I know we're only at the halfway stage of the season, but do you think there could be a possibility for some team orders coming in here for either Jag or Andretti?
In what way?
Well, we saw it at the end of last year where they got certain drivers to back off so that the others would progress forwards. I know that
it's too early when you've got Nick Cassidy and also Mitch Evans still within title chances. I think it's too early for doing that. It will come at some point, and that's something that Cassidy will want, and Evans certainly will not want, but that's much later down the line.
Yeah, and you've got 3 double headers coming up after today, so what's that? That's another 171 points, 174 points up for grabs with the fastest laps. So, yeah, I think it's way too early.
Well, we've got the semi-finals coming up for you very, very shortly here for round 10. Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy, the 2 Jag teammates along the way very, very shortly. Here's how we got here, though, from the quarterfinals. Evans and Gunter, Mortara versus Cassidy, Nato and Van Dorn, and Dennis and Verline. Ultimately, it's the 2 Jags versus the 2 Andretti's into the semi-finals. So we'll have a Jag and Andretti final then, shall we? That sounds like it's going to be an exciting prospect. But which of those 4 drivers is going to make that step forward? One driver who didn't make it through was Edo Mortara in the Mahindra. Pole position here for round 9 yesterday. Unfortunately, he's out in the quarterfinals and he's talking to Nicky.
Well, Eduardo Mortara obviously had pole yesterday, but still managed to get in through to the duels. How much momentum can you now carry on into the race?
No idea. I think the qualifying today was probably slightly worse than yesterday, but still positive from our side. Now the race will be obviously quite another story. Yesterday it wasn't ideal, but I think that we managed to spot like a couple of things that we can improve and make better today. So let's see.
Surprised at the pace of the Andretti's today?
I'm not surprised about anything in Formula E. It's so unpredictable that, yeah.
This is very true. All right, well, good luck for the race. Thanks very much, Eduardo Mortara.
So then, looking forward to this one. Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy. 2 very competitive drivers, and 2 drivers who have worked very well together as well. Just a notice on our timing screens coming through that Van Dorn's under investigation for a technical infraction as well. He lost out to Nato quarters. So then, the first of the semi-final duels coming up here in Berlin. Looking forward to seeing what will happen between the Jaguar TCS Racing boys of Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy. Straight after that, we'll have Dennis versus Nato as well. I should imagine looks going to be pretty spicy between these two. Yesterday, in terms of where the qualifying was for Jaguar, they were 9th and 10th on the grid. Cassidy just in front of his teammate Evans.
And this just underlines the point about the unpredictability of FE, isn't it? You know, we've got 4 drivers here in the semi-finals, none of whom made the duels yesterday.
Well, none of them were in the top 10 yesterday. They were at the back end of it because these guys were on the 5th, 6th row of the grid.
No, 9th and 10th you just said, wasn't it?
9th and 10th yesterday.
Yeah. Pay attention, Alan, come on.
It's been a long weekend.
Yeah. Very early morning as well.
Well, here is Norman Nato then, and the last time we saw Dennis versus Nato actually was back in Rome for the semi-finals, which of course was a race that Dennis went on to win. He did pretty much the perfect race there, if I seem to recall. He led every single lap and went on to, of course, take the victory. You can see the stats there, 5 times we've seen Nato in the semi-finals. Here is Roger Griffiths looking a lot more buoyant and positive than he was here yesterday.
I would have said relieved.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. I would not have wanted to been in yesterday at all because it wasn't a good day at the office.
To be honest, I wouldn't have wanted to have to make the telephone call back to Michael Andretti.
But it's a big day for them to score well in the race against Cassidy. You know, I think Cassidy's got so much momentum in the championship, and Dennis now is over a race victory behind in terms of the points. He's 32 points behind Cassidy in the championship, and I think psychologically, as soon as you go over that 25-point threshold, that's quite big. So they really need to try and stop the Cassidy momentum today.
And there's 3 points as well for pole position. So from that perspective, it is quite important that they try to hook every single point back that they can.
Yeah, looking here at Nick Cassidy, this is his lap in the quarterfinals. You see slightly wide there going into 2. Otherwise, all okay. And he really sort of, I say he hooked it up. He had a bit of oversteer there actually into 3, didn't he?
Yeah, and he went a little bit wide as well, so he didn't quite get the cutback through turn 4 that he'd have wanted, which then compromised very, very slightly the run down to this corner here.
It's the rear going into this corner that just always seems to want to break away for those drivers. Cassidy did a good job of just managing to hold that on.
Quite a bit of movement on the rear, actually, isn't it? In compared to what we saw with Dennis's onboard earlier, it really looks like the rear of the Jaguar is a bit more lively. But maybe Cassidy quite likes that, because for one lap, you know, it gives you this ability to rotate the car and set the exits up.
It gives you an agility as well to make it move around, but it's still kicking quite a lot. He's doing a lot of correction on the steering wheel.
Get close to the wall there as he came across the timing line. Was enough for Cassidy to progress forward into the semi-finals. Just having a look as well, Jaguar teammates been in the duels for the 2nd time this year, and the last time that was on an occasion was in Diriyah in the quarterfinals when Evans beat Cassidy. So the form book suggests that it will go the way of Evans, but given how unpredictable this weekend has been, anything can happen. Don't forget about the Formula E Predictor app as well on the top left-hand corner of your screen. Scan that QR code and tell us what your thoughts are as well. It's all good enough here sitting in the commentary box saying we think this is going to happen in X, Y and Z, but we want to hear what your thoughts are on the matter as well. So final preparations now taking place as we look here at Mitch Evans' side of the garage as he gets ready to head out onto the circuit for a 2nd time. Of course, he's got his eye in already with a 350 kilowatt lap in qualifying. He's just got him done it a couple of minutes ago. So fans watching on then as the 2 Jaguars line up at the exit of pit lane as we head for our first semi-final duel. Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy. What they'll do is they'll line up here. The green light will come on. Evans will go out first and they will leave in allotted time so they don't run into each other on the circuit during their hot laps. But here is confirmation just once again of the qualifying duels so far. So Evans versus Cassidy for the first semi-final. Dennis versus Nato for semi-final 2. It'll be 1 Jaguar and 1 Andretti in the front row fight, but which of those 4 drivers will be making that step forwards in a few minutes' time. Just have to notice coming through on our timing screen as well that Berline's under investigation for a technical infraction. More on that in a moment. And here is the Formula E Predictor app. 69% of you reckon that Nick Cassidy will be going into the front row fight here in Berlin. teammate, though, Mitch Evans, will be first out onto the circuit. And I should imagine that the team watching on will be slightly anxious going into this session. You can see that the massive black lines that have been laid down by drivers who've tried to get heat into the tyres. Of course, only one build lap before they get the chance to go and set their flyer.
I think that was from Edo Mortara yesterday, where he did the biggest burnout ever, trying to get the temperature into the tyres.
So Evans out on to the circuit then, makes his way past the Douglas C45. And then Cassidy now out onto the track as well. Temperature beginning to build here in Berlin as well. Sunshine looking pretty much like it's set to stay for the remainder of the afternoon.
This is a weird one for the team and James Barclay, isn't it? Either he's going to be delighted he wins and sad that he loses all at once.
Exactly.
Conflict of emotions.
Well, he can't lose.
He can't win.
He can win, but he can't lose. He's going to have somebody going through to the final in one way or another.
Yeah, well, it could be...
There's a lot worse places to be.
Yes, that's true.
So we put it that way.
Put it up, yeah. Okay.
Right then, let's see what happens. Mitch Evans around the final corner, across the timing line to begin his one and only flying lap here in semi-final one as we head down towards the first corner. Looking okay so far on the brakes. What's it like into turn 2? Not so bad. Good exit out of there as well. Not using quite as much of the road as some drivers have on the exit of that corner, but looking good through turns 3 and 4 as well. We've seen drivers lose a fair chunk of lap time there between the two. What we've done now here is we've slowed these 2 laps down, so we get a side-by-side comparison here between Evans and Cassidy. So this gives us a really good opportunity to analyse the difference between the two in these corners.
Cassidy's got a little bit less understeer than Evans. Evans putting more steering lock in.
There's nothing
at that part of the lap.
There's nothing between them. 40 thousandths. Oh, tighter line for Cassidy. Evans has gone deep at turn 6. We'll see if he's managed to carry momentum, but he's lost. That going there, missing the apex at 6 has cost him a 10th and a half. So it's advantage Cassidy as they come onto the back straight.
Yeah, it's going to be, well, I say close between the two. There's a 10th of a second, but Cassidy's now sort of building out that advantage throughout the remainder of this lap. He comes through into the final series of corners. Deeper line again there for Mitch Evans. The possibility he's just starting to overdrive the car now as he tries to claw back that advantage. Cassidy comes to the line, 0.2 of a second nearly in his pocket. Evans claws a little bit back, but it's not enough. And Nick Cassidy will go through. Mitch Evans is out of qualifying in the semi-finals.
Somewhat strangely there, Cassidy's time is slower than he did in the quarterfinals. So wasn't a perfect lap for him, but I think it was the error we saw from Evans at 6 just turned the tide, didn't it?
Middle sector, he was a couple of tenths slower than Cassidy.
Well, the team delighted on one side of the garage, disappointed on the other. And this was Nick Cassidy on his flying lap during that session. Looks really good through these slower corners. And of course, not running deep down at 6 and 7 would have just given him that advantage that he had to hold for the rest of the lap.
The Jaguar, ever since they joined Formley's, always been good in tight 90-degree corners. In those type of situations, the car, for whatever reason, has always been agile and on the front.
Semi-final 2 then, Jake Dennis versus Norman Nato. Nato, actually the quicker of the two lap time terms in the first of the quarterfinals earlier on here today. As we look at his teammate Nato coming across the timing line. Dennis slightly wide actually into turn 2 a few moments ago. Does Nato have a tighter line and get the apex there?
He does. A much tighter line. I'd like to see how that pans out in terms of the time. Well, apparently no big difference. So really different approaches to that first corner.
Well, that was the first mini sector there, and Nato's built up a 10th of a second now over Dennis throughout the remainder of sector 1. So Dennis is going to have to try and claw back that advantage during the rest of this lap, but that's a hard task to do so. Lights up the rear tyres a little bit on the exit of 9 as well.
He did let that a little bit out of 7. The car walked a little bit as he went onto the power.
Nato still building on that advantage. Could we see Nato going through into the finals for the first time this season? Dennis nice and smooth out of 14 through 15 across the timing line. What does it look like for him? It's a 102 flat, but Nato losing time now.
He's made a mistake somewhere at turn 9, I think, because he's dropped a 10th at turn 9 and as the lap unfolds, Tom.
Yeah, he's fighting it there. He's got two 100s up, and it's going to be close between these two as we come to the line. I think Dennis is just going to do it. He does by 22 thousandths of a second. Jake Dennis will be wiping his brow, I'm sure, after that one, because that's about as close as you want between the two teammates in terms of lap times. We need to have another look and see what happened to Nato there, because he was holding an advantage in the first half of the lap, but in the second half, it all got away from the Frenchman. So Jake Dennis then goes into the finals.
Yeah, it's impressive how bad the traction is on this set, but yeah, no worries, guys. I don't know who makes it through, but mega job.
Just 200s in it so far. Oh, you're through 200s. Nice work.
Yeah, we did see them walking a little bit as he came out and went onto the throttle, the rear of the car dancing around, and now confirmation. Struggled with traction.
Well, Roger Griffiths makes it through, so there we go. You can see that the semi-finals are done and dusted. It is going to be Nick Cassidy versus Jake Dennis in the finals then. So, two drivers who didn't make it through into the duels at all yesterday and had a bit of a difficult time in qualifying, now going to be on the front row of the grid. But in which order will they be lining up? Will we see Dennis getting onto pole position, or will it be Cassidy at the top here in Tempelhof? Well then, looking forward to this one, Andretti versus Jaguar here in Berlin. It's been a fantastic weekend's worth of racing, and it is final time then here. Jake Dennis versus Nick Cassidy. As the drivers come back into the pit lane, final preparations now taking place. He's done a couple of good laps here, Jake Dennis. One driver though who hasn't made it through, also with a Porsche powertrain, was Pascal Wehrlein.
We made it or not?
Yes, baby. We're against Cassidy.
Oh, nice. Well done, guys. Yeah, I was happy no matter who went through then, so great to have Norman up there with me. Really good laps from him today. These are one of my best I've done, so for him to be there is incredible.
Contrast to 24 hours ago there for Jake Dennis when he was pretty bitterly disappointed. One driver who didn't make it through was Pascal Wehrlein for the quarterfinals. Let's go down to Nicky, who is catching up with the Tag Heuer Porsche driver.
Well, Pascal Wehrlein, we go again here in Berlin. Can you leave today being back at the top of the championship standings? Is that the goal?
We will try, but it looks like everyone in front in the championship is also starting from the front, so won't be easy, but we will try.
What is the strategy for today's race?
We don't know yet. We'll figure out after quali now.
Brilliant, thanks very much.
Pascal Wehrlein then out of the quarterfinals. Work to do for him come the race this afternoon. What about this man here, Nick Cassidy, championship leader now, courtesy of that victory. Actually set the fastest lap inside the top 10 yesterday as well, so got a good points haul in the race. And it was just a strategic masterclass from him. Cassidy almost ghosted his way to the front of the order. Such was the action that was kicking off at the front. Sort of missed where he came through. Suddenly he was there, and right when it mattered, he was ready to pounce. There's his race engineer Phil Ingram, and then team principal James Barkley. We've got another super slow-mo of him celebrating yesterday, which I'm sure he'll be very thankful for. He's taking his readers off for the finals as well. That's when you know it's getting serious, Alan.
Reading the point score at the end of the season, that's the only thing that any of the team principals are going to be looking at. Right now it's just a little bit of pre-race entertainment, but there are 3 points for this next one, and it's either going to go in the way of Dennis, which is very important for his driver's championship challenge, or Nick Cassidy. And if Nick gets it, then it just extends over Pascal Wehrlein, but also especially over Mitch Evans, his teammate.
Yeah, absolutely. There is confirmation of the Drivers' Championship. You can see Nick Cassidy leads Pascal Wehrlein by 9 points in the standings. Dennis, a good opportunity for him to claw back some here this afternoon as well. So then, we are ready to go for the finals for round 10 of the Sun Minimeal Berlin E-Prix. It is time to see who of the two drivers of Nick Cassidy and Jake Dennis will be lining up on pole position. First time that we've seen these two in a final in the duels in 2024. And of course, it's the final between the two drivers who finished 1 and 2 in the Drivers' World Championship last year as well. So let's see how this is going to play out. What a turnaround in fortunes this has been for the Andretti team. This time yesterday, they were right at the back of the field, 20th and 21st on the grid. Here are their fastest laps, though, from the semi-finals here. It's a mock final run-through that we can see as we head down towards that first corner. A bit more soaring away at the wheel there for Cassidy as he tried to get the car all stabilised into turn 2. Dennis, a little bit more movement, though, in the slower corners. He said he was struggling with traction there, and it was only down to the mistake that Norman Nato made that ultimately gave him the opportunity to get through into the final, because Nato held a good advantage in the first part of that. You see Cassidy slightly tighter there going through turn 6 and turn 7 here, Alan, as well.
What you look at Dennis on the right, he's put in a lot of steering, and he comes back very much as a jerk, so he feels where the grip is, and then he's straight on the steering wheel going on throttle.
Down in towards this triple apex left-hander. Kiss the first one, miss the second one, and then aim for the third one. Bit of a snap of oversteer there for both drivers actually going through turn 15. They came across the timing line, but nothing really in it.
Nothing in it at all. This is going to be about who gets the braking right into the first couple of corners and who doesn't make a mistake. If there's any mistake, I think that's it.
What were their times in the semi-finals? Nick Cassidy, a 1:02.067. Jake Dennis, a 1:02.088. I mean, that's about as close as it can be. Not the closest margin we've seen in Formula E, but of course we've got another lap to come here for them very shortly, as Dennis now exits out of the garage, ready to try and do the business here and get his first pole position of 2024. Likewise, Nick Cassidy also aiming for the same feat as well. And great to see the fans flocking into Berlin here, this Tempelhof circuit. As we said, a bit of a fan favourite. People have made the pilgrimage all the way over from the UK as well, and I'm sure some further afield than that, as the Geist family watch on. Had a spot of dinner with them last night, didn't you, Alan? How was it?
Yes, very good. I found out my son went to school with the children as well, which was a bit of a surprise. But
small world, isn't
yeah,
it?
they're enjoying their time in Formula E and bringing a different flavour to the paddock, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, nice steak as well. Enjoyed that.
So just to move away from your dinner chat, you're saying the lap times from the semi-finals, Cassidy and Dennis, you know, it was 200s between them, and to give you some context, you know, blink of an eye is about 1/10 of a second. You do 5 blinks of an eye in that time gap.
How slow do you blink?
Have you timed it? Go on, get your stopwatch out.
It's absolute minute differences.
Well, I think this is going to be pretty exciting in this one. As we wait for Dennis to come out, you can hear his car now into the fast lane, followed by Nick Cassidy then. So 350 kilowatts of power available at their right foot here. And it'll be Dennis out onto the circuit first of all. Both of them chasing their first pole position of the season, and also chasing a top 4 start at Tempelhof. Neither of them have started. Here's how we got here in the qualifying duels, by the way, just to remind you. So you can see there, we had Evans and Cassidy going through from the quarters, Nato and Dennis also through as well. Then it was Jaguar versus Andretti in the semis. The upshot is that it was Dennis and Cassidy, the 2 drivers who are now into the finals. Both of whom, of course, as we said, did not make it through this time 24 hours ago for round 9. Well, let's see how this is going to work out. What does the Formula E predictor say, though, between Jake Dennis and Nick Cassidy? 70-30 split there. Nick Cassidy has got the fan support here this afternoon.
It's quite punchy.
See if it translates into on-track performance here for the Kiwi. Wait for that green light to come on at the exit of pit lane. Now the Andretti team watching on. I tell you what, the body language and just the atmosphere down there looks considerably more positive than it did this time yesterday. Green light is on then, as we see Jake Dennis emerging onto the circuit. Not in a flurry of wheel spin like we had from Edo Mortara in the Mahindra yesterday. But Nick Cassidy now ready to go out onto the circuit. So now it's all about building heat into the tyres and getting everything in as good a working range as they can for this one and only flyer.
Brakes, tyres, preparation is the key.
So Cassidy then out onto the track in the Jaguar. And we'll see him pushing the front and rear of that car. just trying to see how much temperature he can get into it. There is James Barkley, team principal. There's the rest of the Jaguar team watching on. Phil Ingram, race engineer there for Nick Cassidy, just in the background of your shots. Out of turn 9. This is where we saw Dennis picking up a little bit of oversteer on his semi-final lap a few minutes ago. He'll be able to try and right those wrongs and put together a bit of a tidier run. But look at him pushing the front of that car as he comes around that triple apex left-hander to begin his flying lap. And now Dennis comes across the timing line. Then we are ready to go between Jake Dennis and Nick Cassidy then for round 10. Here we go into the first corner. Nice and tidy through into there. What's it like? A little bit deep.
Ooh. Bit of power oversteer there as he went onto the throttle. He was on just after the apex and the car moved a little bit.
Only just a sort of foot or so offline going into turn 2. That might cost him half a tenth of a second or so. You can see Nick Cassidy in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Let's see what he looks like as he comes over the timing line. First sector for Dennis is strong though. It's a 19.5.
He got a really good line there into turn 6 again, and then using all the width on the way out. Watching Cassidy in the bottom left, misses the apex of 3, and that's compromised his line into 4. So Cassidy didn't look like he had a great run through there, and it's cost him about half a tenth.
Well, just to remind you, neither of these drivers have started in the top 4 here in Tempelhof. Both of them are chasing their first pole position of the season, and it's advantage for Cassidy. If anything, a little bit deep there for Dennis, and a snap of oversteer coming through 14 as well as he tried to correct it. We come to the timing line here for Jake Dennis. What does it look like for him? It's a 101.819. Nick Cassidy is now building up the advantage. Let's see what he can do in this second sector. 19,000 of a second is up, but he's lost time in sector 2, and he's going to have the mother and father of all final sectors to try and correct that. We saw a mistake from Dennis here, so that might present an opportunity for Nick Cassidy. He too has a slip and a slide though as we come to the timing line. Surely it is going to go the way of Jake Dennis as we go to the checkered flag, and it does. Jake Dennis takes his first pole position of 2024, his first top 4 start here in Tempelhof as well, and it is delight for Andretti as well after the anguish of 24 hours ago, starting right at the very back of the field. Jake's girlfriend there watching on from the Emotion Club as well. And what a fantastic job from Andretti. Pole position.
What a difference a day makes.
Amazing.
And it was also the fastest lap of all of the qualifying that Jake Dennis did to take that pole position. It wasn't a bad lap from Cassidy, but a better lap from Dennis.
Pole, baby. Get in.
Yes!
What a man.
Well, the last time that we saw Jake Dennis on pole was back in Rome 2023. He's never finished lower than second after starting from pole position as well. So let's see whether that translates into good fortune this afternoon.
Well, he's going to be hoping that that is the case and that continues, but stunning, stunning recovery by Jake Dennis, and just shows you should never give up.
Amazing job from Dennis. Despondent here yesterday. Turns into delight here for round 10. And Roger Griffiths as well. Fantastic. Just amazing, really, to see all the team celebrating, and the contrast in fortunes and emotions as well. And you can see what it means for that team as well. They were down on their luck, and the team that you can see there have all been diving into the data late into the night to try and find those sort of micro gaps.
Oh my God! Yes! Oh boys, oh that's my most enjoyable pole. Yes! What a turnaround from yesterday. What a turnaround. Yes!
I'm glad we borrowed the beat machine for that one. Great lap time for Jake Dennis. Pole position and a Julius Baer trophy. I wonder if it'll be the only silverware that he takes home here today. We will find out later on here this afternoon. Norman Nato as well, shout out to him. Great qualifying. He'll be on that second row of the grid. Actually lining up in 3rd position, so on the clean side as well, as he qualified ahead of Mitch Evans in terms of the lap time sets. So, two Andretti starts on the clean side of the grid. I wonder how beneficial that will be for them come the race starts. Apologies for some of the language you can hear there from the Andretti team. Zane Maloney just on the left-hand side of your picture as well. That's the test and reserve driver who does a lot of hours in the simulator along with Nato and Dennis. James Barkley down there congratulating Roger Griffiths as well. He's been there, he knows what it's like to be down on your luck. And when your chips are down, sometimes they've got to throw it all onto red. And it's exactly what Andretti did. And fortunately, they hit the jackpot. If you're listening to Mitch Evans.
Yeah, it's going to be really good enough to be able to hold it flat into one.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit disappointed there because he'll be starting fourth on the grid, directly behind teammate Nick Cassidy. And, well, you can imagine that
I can hear the radio.
This is going to be,
I can't hear you, but I can hear him.
When you went against Jake, it was silence.
You got to over 1/10 ahead? Yeah, I don't know where I lost. Turn 9. I had some weird spinning. I don't know. I didn't see the data. I think I braked a bit too early. The sector is turn 9.
Yeah, you can hear there that Nato is saying that he was suffering from a bit of wheel spin, which is exactly the same sort of problem. This is the mistake that Cassidy made on that flying lap, just a snap of oversteer through 3. Look, he's slightly deep through there, then has to correct it just a touch. And then that puts him slightly offline going into turn 4. And then you're chasing your tail for the rest of the lap at that point. Down towards 9 as well. Oh, he was deep into 9, look at that. He was about a month of Sundays away from the apex. For Nick Cassidy, could have put a double-decker bus in between the gap of him and that apex after he just ran it a bit too deep on the brakes into that hairpin. The scene of a lot of action yesterday. Of course, the E-Prix this afternoon, 2 laps shorter than we had yesterday. So I dare say that this is going to be very exciting indeed. Let's go down to catch up with the man who starts on pole position for the first time this year, Jake Dennis.
Jake Dennis, huge congratulations, your first pole. Slight difference from yesterday.
I mean, what a turnaround for the team. Yeah, pole position, Norman second row. Yeah, so unexpected coming into today. We obviously threw the kitchen sink at it last night, and it paid off. Both cars are performing really well, and yeah, we're getting our pole position, so 3 points, and it just feels good to be back. You know, I felt like I forgot how to drive these past couple of races, and yeah, to know I can still do it and put in a lap like that is a special feeling.
Definitely back in the fight for the championship title.
Well, I don't think I was ever out of it, even after obviously Nick's win and my DNF, but it's still a long way to go. But yeah, right now I think everyone inside that team is just more happy that we've found our issue. And yeah, hopefully from now on in we should be a little bit better. And yeah, the racing itself will obviously be chaotic. Pole doesn't mean too much, but I'm just happy to get the 3 points and the front row start.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. I'd now like to welcome 2 students from the AMZ Formula student team, Tibet and Jan, to present you with the Julius Baer pole position trophy. Jake Dennis there for Andretti.
Dennis has done it then, 3 points for pole position here as well. Fantastic job for the Avalanche Andretti driver. Let's see what he can do come the E-Prix this afternoon with 38 laps of action set to be on the way. So then, now our focus shifts over to the next 2 drivers who will be lining up in the, the next driver will be lining up alongside him on that front row of the grid, which is Nick Cassidy. We'll hear from him in a few moments' time, I'm sure. Jake Dennis then, pole position for him, and great to see some support here all the way from the UK. Let's go down then and catch up with Nick Cassidy in the Jaguar TCS Racing machine front row of the grid.
Nick Cassidy, congratulations, another front row start for you. Obviously, currently at the top of the teams at the Drivers' Championship at the moment. What is going to happen in the course of this race?
I don't know. Yesterday's race, it was pretty hectic. So I think, you know, obviously, or not obviously, but I'm thinking anyone in the top 10 can win, but it's still, but I still think it's really nice to have a good quali. It's carrying a bit of momentum from yesterday, and it's kind of been a difficult one for us, this track on 1 lap pace. It's nice to have that a bit sorted today.
Obviously, Andretti were totally off the pace yesterday, but they've really turned things around. Do you think Jake's now your sort of biggest rival on track today?
Yeah, I'd imagine there's a bit of cut, copy and paste from their garage next door. They look really strong today. Both cars for them up there. We have both cars up there as well, so it's going to be a fun battle.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much, Nick Cassidy.
Championship leader Nick Cassidy, second on the grid. Not 3 points for him here today, in qualifying at least. But Dennis, and that pole position means he's now just 29 points off the lead. So he won't be able to take the championship lead here this afternoon, but he can certainly get himself in with a shout. But we know how impressive this man is under racing conditions, especially in the peloton style of races that we have in Formula E here in Berlin this weekend. Really excited to see what is going to happen. Of course, opportunity knocks for a lot of drivers. Let's have a look through the starting grid. So Dan Tickton with a penalty will be at the back with Kelvin van der Linde in the Abt Cupra alongside. Then next up is Jordan King in the Mahindra with Paul Aaron, the rookie in the Envision, alongside. Taylor Barnard for the Neil McLaren team. We'll have Sasha Fenestraz for company on the third but last row of the grid. And then it's Ollie Rowland, who has been on pole position, and Sergio Setecamera, who was in the duels here yesterday, down in 15th place. Jake Hughes does outqualify his teammates here today with Jehan Derubala in the Maserati alongside. Lucas de Grassi just outside the top 10. And Joel Eriksson, good performance for him in the Envision in 11th place. Felix da Costa in 10th with Jean-Eric Verne in 9th position as well. Mortara and Verline in 8th and 7th place respectively there as well.
Yeah, we'll be all right. Just... Right, so we have our pole sitter for race 10 of Formula E here in Berlin. And it's the reigning champion, Jake Dennis, who got it done in the final out there today. Well, let's have a look at how the grid is going to be setting up